Jesus, you're kidding. You telling me they let you in here?
Well, I know you get this all the time.
No, I don't.
No, but, I have a psychic, and I asked her about you, and she told me that we were destined to make it
Look,
together.
whoever you are, please, I'm tired. Go away.
Well, I won't stay over. Yeah. I mean, I just know you're a Sagittarius, and Sagittarians get along really well with Pisces, because I'm a Pisces. Yeah. And I just think that...
Will you get out of the bed, please?
Well, wait, here. And I drove all the way from Bridgeport to make it with you.
Yeah?
That was Woody Allen trying to get rid of a groupie who won't take no for an answer in his new film, Stardust Memories. And Stardust Memories is one of 5 new movies we'll take a look at this week on Sneak Previews. 2 film critics reviewing the new movies in town. Across the aisle from me is Gene Siskel, film critic of the Chicago Tribune.
And this is Roger Ebert, film critic of the Chicago Sun-Times. Now, in addition to Stardust Memories, we have a bunch of more conventional comedies on the show. There's Marty Feldman's slam at television evangelists in God We Trust. Also, Diane Cannon and Robert Blake laughing it up in a truck in Coast to Coast. And Christopher Reeve appearing in a serious film, a romantic fantasy called Somewhere in Time. But first, Roger begins with the second coming of George Burns in the comedy Oh God, Book 2.
Well, one of the surprise hit movies of a few years ago was Oh God, comedy starring George Burns in the title role. Burns played God as a sort of deified Will Rogers, coming up with homespun philosophical insights, masking his intelligence behind a facade of simple common sense. Now George Burns is back again in a sequel called Oh God, Book 2. And this time he singles out a wide-eyed little girl to be his earthly messenger.
Tracy, it's me again.
What? What?
That wasn't a dream you had. It was real.
Where are you?
In the back seat. Well, disappointed?
Oh, gosh, no. God, sir, why would I be disappointed, sir? Are you really God, sir?
Forget the sir. Just plain God, the owner of the store, also known as the man upstairs.
I don't know, but somehow I thought you'd look holier and more fancy, sort of. I mean, like with a crown and a long beard and a flowing white robe.
You're thinking of Charlton Heston.
I can't get over it. It's just that I guess I expected you to look much older.
Thanks, Tracy. I take care of myself.
How old are you?
Who knows? After the first 2 million years, I stopped counting. It's awkward talking like this.
Wow, how'd you do that?
If I could part the Red Sea, I can certainly move to the front of a car.
You know, I wonder if it ever gets a little scary to George Burns that he plays God so convincingly. George Burns has come down to earth again to ask that little girl to create an advertising campaign promoting God's Word. But little Tracy gets into trouble since she's the only one who can see God and talk to him. Everybody else thinks she's only talking to herself.
I've been so busy doing your stuff, I haven't done any homework.
Let me see what you got there.
About a zillion problems to make up, that's all.
Let me see, maybe I can help you. Mathematics. That was a mistake. Should have made the whole thing a little easier.
You make mistakes?
Nobody's perfect. I blew it with the Dead Sea. All that salt, no life in it. And the flamingo, beautiful bird. And I put the kneecaps on backwards. And I think I could have found a better way for a skunk to defend himself.
And you sure goof with the giraffe.
Giraffe?
Why'd you make the neck so long?
She could eat the leaves off the trees.
Why didn't you just make the tree shorter?
Where were you when I needed you?
I like that scene, but Oh God, Book 2 would have been a much better movie if more scenes had involved that charming and innocent relationship between George Burns and the little girl. Unfortunately, the movie gets badly sidetracked into a moronic subplot. Little Tracy's teachers and parents get worried when they think she's talking to herself. They make her see a psychiatrist, then they want to send her to a mental institution. Meanwhile, all the kids back at school hold a strike in support of Tracy, and the movie, which starts out delightfully, ends up being very long and very slow and utterly, completely predictable.
Well, you go after the subplots, I'll take the main story on. I think this is just a cheap sequel and does the same kinds of things as the original film did, only less so. Instead of building on that original film where John Denver, a supermarket manager, is visited by God, and God ends up convincing Denver and a lot of other people that God is around and interested in the world, instead of building on that, all they do is replay it with the little girl and give us miracles that are less exciting and dialogue with Burns that is less funny. And it's a cheap sequel to mean nothing more.
You know you're in trouble when you talk about less exciting miracles.
Right.
What I kept thinking was, if God did decide to come back to Earth, he probably would not come back as a character in a situation comedy. And that first film, even though it was a comedy, it had kind of a serious core to it.
Yes, it did.
It wasn't a religious movie, but it had a certain spirituality to it. It kind of dealt with what would happen if God came back down to Earth again and called us all to order, you know. And this one, it's as if they started out and said, okay, God's coming back to Earth, what'll we do now? They were bankrupt of ideas, and they gave us all of this stuff about the teachers, the psychiatrists, and so forth. It's a great premise for a movie. Why did they blow it?
Well, I think it's the sequelitis. I don't think they even try very hard here. I think also that sequels do a big damage to the movie industry. I think that when the public is roped into seeing a sequel, hoping it'll be as good or even better than the original, and they get one of these cheap, quickie rip-offs, especially with a star like George Burns in it, who has so much goodwill, I think this hurts the movie industry, revealing it as very venal and out to make a quick buck.
I agree.
Yeah. Another film. Traveling backward in time has been a constant source of ideas for movies. Just last year, you'll recall, there was The Beautiful Time After Time. Last summer, The Ridiculous Final Countdown. Our next film, Somewhere in Time, falls somewhere in the middle. It's beautiful and ridiculous. It stars Christopher Reeve as a young modern-day playwright who falls in love with an actress who lived in the early 1900s. On vacation at a resort hotel, Reeve sees a portrait of the dead actress, and it's a case of love at second sight, because as the story develops, he has known her in another life. Reeve hypnotizes himself to get back to the year 1912 so he can meet her once again. Once he's back in 1912, he goes to a theater to see the actress perform. She spots him in the audience, breaks out of her character, and delivers an impromptu soliloquy aimed directly at him.
There must be something you like about him.
Yes, his absence. The man of my dreams has almost faded now.
And what man is that, miss?
The one I have created in my mind. The sort of man each woman dreams of in the deepest and most secret reaches of her heart. I can almost see him now before me. What would I say to him if he were really here? Forgive me. I've never known this feeling. I've lived without it all my life. Is it any wonder then I failed to recognize you? You brought it to me for the first time. Is there any way that I can tell you how my life has changed? Any way at all to let you know what sweetness you have given me? There is so much to say. I cannot find the words, except for these. I love you. And such would I say to him if he were really here.
That's a nice speech, sweetly performed by Jane Seymour. Frankly, she's a lot more interesting in this film than Christopher Reeve is. That's because he, unfortunately, has been stuck for the first hour of the picture, boning up on time travel, buying turn-of-the-century clothing at Brooks Brothers, hypnotizing himself with tape recordings of his own voice, not given much of a chance to develop a character. Somewhere in Time makes the mistake of spending its first hour failing to convince us that time travel is possible, while the film's love story, which is convincing and could have been more so, it's given short shrift.
You know, I think you're absolutely right. When we spend an hour waiting for this great romance and waiting and waiting, seeing the picture of the woman on the wall, looking at her handwriting in the ledger, reading her old newspaper
Yep.
clippings, looking at her old playbills. And then finally, when he hypnotizes himself, goes back 68 years, and we're all set for this great romance, and it's a one-night stand.
Yeah, it's unfortunate, but I think there's an explanation for it. It's easier to do the scenes of showing photographs, of listening to a tape recorder. That's easier to do than writing dialogue between two characters. So they went the easy way. And there's another film coming up in this show where, again, they avoid a relationship. Relationships are tough to write. That's why the film has been structured this way, and it's a disappointment.
On the other hand, I think they did a good job of casting with Jane Seymour, because if you're going to have this woman who is worth going all the way back to 1912 to visit, I think Jane Seymour really has kind of an aura, kind of an inner beauty that is even more important than just physical beauty in terms of indicating his obsession.
Yes, he does.
As for Christopher Reeve, on the other hand, I was a little bit disappointed in him. I liked him very much in Superman, but in this picture he seemed, I was afraid he was going to bump into the furniture, you know. He kind of looked like he had another suit on underneath the suit he was wearing.
I agree with you.
Now, let's move on from time travel to cross-country travel.
Okay.
One of my favorite movie classics is The African Queen, with Humphrey Bogart and Katharine Hepburn steaming downriver in a leaky old boat. Now, that same basic formula boils down to a hard-boiled tough guy, an eccentric lady, a dangerous journey, and a stubborn piece of machinery. It's been ripped off in a lot of other movies, and the latest one is Coast to Coast, which stars Robert Blake in the Bogart role and Diane Cannon as the lady, and it replaces the boat with a gigantic semi-trailer truck, sends them off on a cross-country odyssey with a load of cattle. Along the way, a crazy romance springs up between Blake and Cannon, and it gets even crazier when they stop in Kansas City so Cannon can buy a new dress, little suspecting that she's being tailed by a pair of detectives who have bribed Blake to turn her in.
Yeah. What do you think? Oh, that's terrific. Do you like it? That's terrific. That's really I just love it. What's it? These are new shades. I haven't...
We gotta go now.
Oh, Callahan, look at my dress.
Holy sh**.
What do you think? Do you like it?
I got two things. Here's
Oh,
your bill. Is
thank
this your
you.
boyfriend?
Oh, no, this is Callahan, my driver. This is Grace and Georgina and Ida. Here's
right.
the bill.
That's the bill.
Yeah.
Plus the alterations.
More? I mean, is this a sample?
Thank you very much. We have to go
Callahan, I
now.
have to get my hair done.
We have to go now.
Callahan, I'm going to get my hair done.
We have to go
We
now.
have to go. Oh, my dress, my packages.
We have to go now.
We're going. Bye, Grace.
Listen.
Bye, Georgina.
Remember that guy that you whacked over the head?
Are you
The
mad?
one that
What are
was
you
stealing
doing
my
in here?
truck?
Yeah,
He's
what?
back again. They're all back
Well, how
again.
do they know?
We gotta get out of here.
How do they
you
know
gotta
we're
help
here?
me.
Hey, where'd they go?
Quiet now. Slam the door. Don't slam it.
Coast to Coast is not a good movie, but it's also not an entirely bad time. I especially enjoyed Diane Cannon's high energy in this film. She's screaming, running, fighting, shouting, bubbling over from one end of the movie to the other. Robert Blake plays a nice counterpoint to her insanity, but this is basically just a one-situation movie in which the same kind of material is repeated over and over again until we almost wonder, haven't I seen this movie somewhere before?
I liked it even less than you did. I did not care for Diane Cannon's role here. She's just a screaming Mimi as far as I'm concerned in this picture, always screaming his last name of the character, Callahan this, Callahan that. I got tired of that. I think this film must have been conceived of in the time after Smokey and the Bandit and its success, and I'm disappointed that the film did not have the creativity to, again, build the character, spend time on the character instead of wasting its time with car crashes.
We're exactly in agreement here. A situation is no replacement for character. You get them into that cab and you think that's going to take care of everything. Gee, Diane Cannon's driving the truck. Isn't that thrilling? What about them? What about the man and the woman in the 3,000-mile journey?
That's tougher to do. Now we move on to a film where we both, I think, had big expectations. I used to be able to say, for example, I can't think of a Woody Allen film I don't like. Unfortunately, now I can. It is his latest one, Stardust Memories, in which Woody plays a put-upon comic filmmaker named Sandy Bates, who hates all of the problems that success has brought him, problems like the one he encounters when he meets his staff in his apartment. The movie is filmed in black and white.
Can I please get your signature on this oil shelter thing?
Well, you told me cattle.
The cattle died.
Did Isabel
Has anybody
call?
given any thought to Time magazine? Because I said I'd get back
Your
to them.
cousin called. He needs to borrow more money.
Oh, jeez.
Don't
Isabel
bug him
have a
about the
call?
time cover. He can do it after the weekend.
Hey, I don't want to go away this weekend. Who needs a festival of my old films?
Sign here, please.
Ridiculous.
And don't worry about that income tax thing. I'll be with you when you're going to see the Treasury agents.
Treasury agent? Since when is it that serious?
Look, Sandy, this is 2 lousy days. You drive up there, they honor you, they show you films, they ask you a couple of stupid questions, and you go home.
I don't want to be on it. It's a hype.
Don't be ungrateful. She's an important film critic. You promised. They sold a lot of tickets. You can't back out.
You might enjoy it, the nice, clean sea air.
Sandy, we've got to talk about the new picture.
What do you want me to say? I don't want to make funny movies anymore. They can't force me to. I don't feel funny. I look around the world and all I see is human suffering.
Human suffering doesn't sell tickets in Kansas City.
They want laughs in Kansas City. They've been working in the wheat fields all day.
Hey, fellas, I'm getting a headache. Can I please get some privacy?
Your problem is you never got over Nat Bernstein's death.
Of course I never got over... The guy was 30 years old, never sick a day in his life, and then suddenly out of left field, amyotrophic lateral sclerosis. It was horrible. He's laying there in a hospital, his body degenerated like Lou Gehrig.
News this weekend at the seashore. That's something you should take a month.
I don't want... My mother used to take... When I was a kid, my mother took me to the seashore. Little old decaying hotels and awnings, you know?
Valium.
Oh, great. Just want another show business tranquilizer. Hey, did anybody read on the front page of the Times that matter is decaying? Am I the only one that saw that? The universe is gradually breaking down. There's not going to be anything left. I'm not talking about my stupid little films here. Eventually, there's not going to be any Beethoven or Shakespeare or...
Have a nice weekend.
Oh, great.
Well, eventually, the Woody Allen character does go to that weekend film festival of his work, where he is overrun by fans, by groupies, by film buffs, and by the film critic who's hostess of the festival. And eventually, the pressure of all that attention triggers a silent childhood memory. That scene has a charming, intentionally silent ending, but this aloof director is not the kind of nice guy that Woody Allen usually plays, and Stardust Memories is not the usual Woody Allen comedy. He seems to be indicting his fans in this picture and himself. He's indicting everyone in the celebrity game. But to do that, Allen has really stacked the deck against virtually everyone in the film. He plays an unpleasant character surrounded by a lot of other unpleasant characters, and Allen has his character deliver a lot of unpleasant jokes. This is all in an effort to tell us that Woody Allen hates to be asked for his autograph, hates the whole celebrity game. But he says that in the film's first 10 minutes, and then Stardust Memories has little more to say.
You know, Gene, I have to share your disappointment. Usually, you know, you can kind of count on Woody Allen at about this time of year after a summer of terrible movies. Comes along in October with something pretty good, but not this time. I was really disappointed. I think Stardust Memories is a one-note movie, as you suggested. It's very shrill. He has taken as his model a 1963 film by Federico Fellini called 8½, which is on exactly the same subject, and Allen also uses the same visual style in the black and white photography. Fellini's film is about this director who's surrounded by sycophants and would-be collaborators. He's overworked, he's harassed, and yet the Fellini film carries it through. The guy works out his problems. He comes to a terrible end, but nevertheless he's done so by facing what's the matter with him. It's not true in Stardust Memories. It just goes all along at one note. He's mad, and then he's still mad, and then he's still mad about the same thing, and then the movie is over.
There's another thing that bothers me about the film. I sort of hate to see Woody Allen, so creative a person, sort of chase his tail in this movie. He seems to be focusing on the media's preoccupation with him, with people's preoccupation with him. He's giving in to the very problem that he wants to solve, and I think it's just sort of unfortunate. It seems to be a small subject for him to deal with, actually.
This movie is kind of self-defeating, actually. You know, in one of the clips that we just showed, he talked about he doesn't want to make funny movies anymore. He doesn't feel funny. I think in a way he feels ambiguous about humor, and he's so good at making funny movies, and I sound like one of the characters in the movie. I liked your earlier movies better. But recently he's taken on two of the great directors. His movie Interiors was based in terms of visual style on Ingmar Bergman. Now comes this movie based on 8½, and even the first scenes are the same, very similar. I think if Woody Allen wants to find a great director to imitate, he doesn't have to look any further than Woody Allen.
No, I agree with you. And The other thing I want to say is I understand the problem that he's trying to deal with, at least I think I do, and it's contained in that little beautiful silent memory of his childhood. I guess what he's saying is, you know, when I was a little kid, all I wanted to do was create magic, and that's what I want to do in my movies, but unfortunately all this mess has come in on me. Well, I understand that, and it's beautifully expressed in that one little bit, but that's in the film's first 15 or 20 minutes. Then, unfortunately, he adds nothing, and that's the disappointment.
Unfortunately, we're both very disappointed.
Yep.
Let's move on now to a movie that takes the tired and predictable old target of hard-sell television evangelists and does tired and predictable old things with it. The movie's called In God We Trust, and it's mostly the work of Marty Feldman, who wrote it, directed it, and stars in it as an innocent monk who's told to go out in the world and find the money to pay off the mortgage on the monastery. In no time at all, he's involved with low-life street people like Louise Lasser, who plays a hooker on the run.
Father! Father!
I'm not a father. I'm a brother, sister. What is it you want?
The sanctuary of the church.
Huh?
Oh. Just hide me till the cops come by. Look casual.
Marty Feldman's main adversary in the movie is a money-grubbing television evangelist named Armageddon T. Thunderbird, played by comedian Andy Kaufman.
Mr. Thunderbird. I've been trying to see you for months. I have this letter from the abbot. It's about the mortgage on the monastery.
I know.
You know?
I have the mortgage deed to your monastery. It will be yours in good time. Everything in your life has been leading up to this moment. God has chosen you, Brother Ambrose, to lead his nationwide Mobile crusade.
Me? Look, Mr. Thunderbird, may I be honest with you?
Why, surely.
You see, in your services, all you do is talk about money. I thought virtue was its own reward.
Of course it is. That's why it doesn't attract the top talent. But the Bible,
God's book, says we should share the money equally.
wrong. If God had not meant for some people to be poorer than others, then he would not have published the Bible in paperback.
Really funny. In God We Trust desperately wants to be a zany comic satire, but it winds up being a forced march through all sorts of material that's been done many times before. What bored me most were the endless scenes involving the love affair between Marty Feldman and Louise Lasser. She tries to teach the innocent monk the facts of life, but he's such a slow student that the movie almost comes to a complete standstill. What a bore.
Yep, we agree 5 times out of 5 on this show.
Wow.
And it is really a dull film. I think Marty Feldman makes a big mistake. He seems to think that his character on screen is funny simply because he's sort of funny looking. He fails as writer and director to make the character interesting and to make his relationships with other people interesting.
Exactly right.
That's been the theme of this show. Yeah, maybe we've learned something about comedy here, or in drama too. If you don't have the characters and the relationships written well, nothing that you add, no car crashes, no jokes are going to make it work.
Hold on, Gene. I don't think the movies are going to get any better. Here's Spot the Wonder Dog leaping into the balcony to help track down the Dogs of the Week, a regular Sneak Previews feature where we each choose the week's worst movies.
Well, my dog this week is another one of those attacks on women pictures we've been getting lately. I don't blame you, Spot. They're horrible. It's called He Knows You Are Alone, and the killer in this one is a psychotic who preys on brides-to-be. It seems this guy was jilted once, and now he's on a rampage, surprising one victim in a house of horrors. This movie is really depraved, playing up to the sickies in the audience who like to see independent women stabbed to death. Can't get a woman to do what you want, then rape her, beat her up. She won't fight back. That's the perverted message of He Knows You're Alone. You know, sometimes our dogs of the week are laughably bad. This one borders on being evil.
Gee, my dog this week is not very laughable either. It's a really offensive, tasteless, and artless piece of garbage named Caligula, which was produced by the publisher of Penthouse magazine, Bob Guccione. Caligula opened in New York 8 months ago, but its distribution got held up by an obscenity trial in Boston, and it's only now going into national release. Caligula stars several prestigious British actors, John Gielgud, Peter O'Toole, Malcolm McDowell, but Gielgud and O'Toole are only on the screen for about 20 minutes, and I'll bet McDowell, as Caligula, wishes he were too. That way he wouldn't have to be in the rest of this violent, nauseating, and sickening mess that rewrites Roman history as a nonstop orgy of perversion and sadism.
Well, so much for the dog. Now let's review our reactions to the main movies on the show. I think you might say there's been sort of a consistency to our remarks. We haven't liked a single film this week. Roger and I each give 2 no votes to Oh God Book 2, a dismal comedy with George Burns and not much else. It's another rip-off sequel that doesn't come close to the original. 2 no votes means we can't recommend you see Oh God Book 2. We also didn't like Somewhere in Time, the Christopher Reeve time travel romance. The first hour is pure torture as we wait for him to get back to 1912. 2 no's for that. The same for Coast to Coast, a dumb trucker movie with Diane Cannon screaming her head off for 2 hours. Roger liked her enthusiasm. I say, get that woman a muzzle. Also, a big disappointment. 2 no votes for the latest Woody Allen film, Stardust Memories. Unfortunately, it's a trivial commentary on the perils of being a celebrity or a fan. And 2 very strong no's for Marty Feldman's religious satire In God We Trust, in which Feldman takes on TV evangelists and loses.
Well, so much for this week. Next week on Sneak Previews, we'll review 5 more new films, including Private Benjamin, a comedy enlisting Goldie Hawn in the Army. Why Would I Lie, an offbeat love story about an eccentric welfare worker, and Gloria, starring Jenna Rollins as a mobster's girlfriend who winds up protecting a 7-year-old boy. Until then, we'll see you at the movies.
Funding for Sneak Previews was provided by this station and by other public television stations.